Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Seem to be coming to a head for Twitter in India as government sources say that the social media platform will be losing its status as an intermediary and therefore can no longer seek protection under the safe harbor provisions of the IT Act. Twitter faces this prospect since it failed to comply with the new IT rules, the 2021 intermediary guidelines. IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad tweeted on the 16th of June, Twitter was given multiple opportunities to comply with the same, that is, the 2021 intermediary guidelines. However, it has deliberately chosen the path of non-compliance. Now that Twitter has lost its intermediary status, Twitter can be held directly editorially responsible for the content on its platform and can be punished under India's laws, tweeted ANI. So the first FIR to be lodged against Twitter comes from the Ghaziabad police, which is in connection with the assault of an elderly man in Loni in Ghaziabad. The Ghaziabad police has charged not only Twitter, but also some journalists, online media outlets, and some Congress leaders with promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion and race. While commotion was created by this news of Twitter losing its intermediary shield, the question arises, can the government decide if Twitter or any social media intermediary is stripped of its intermediary status and loses the safe harbor provisions? According to experts, not exactly. So Alok Prasanna Kumar, a senior resident fellow at the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, said, "It is up to the courts to decide whether Twitter qualifies for the safe harbor provision in Section 79 of the IT Act. This will be done on a case-by-case basis when Twitter has to defend itself when it is sued. The government or a government source cannot decide whether it qualifies as an intermediary and whether safe harbor is applicable." So let's say there is a scenario where Twitter does not qualify for safe harbor. What happens? According to cyber law expert and a Supreme Court advocate, Dr. Pawan Duggal, what could happen is that Twitter's top management in India may face jail time. Twitter in India will also now be liable to face criminal court proceedings. However, Duggal added, and I quote, "Losing safe harbor is not provision for shutting down or banning Twitter." So no, Twitter will not be shut down because of this. Another question is, how serious are these new IT rules, these 2021 rules? Turns out the gravity and the impact of these rules is quite deep and signals the end of India going easy on enforcing its IT laws. Twitter has already said that it is concerned by how these new laws holds the company designated compliance officer as criminally liable. Dr. Duggal says the 2021 IT rules are mandatory in nature and marks a new chapter in cyber law jurisdiction. The honeymoon period from 2009 to 2021 has ended. This refers to how in 2009, the amended IT Act was enforced and had safe harbor provisions for intermediaries. Turns out the government does not even need to communicate to Twitter that it has lost its intermediary status. The 2021 rules are so strict that Rule 7 clearly states, where an intermediary fails to observe these rules, the provisions of subsection 1 of Section 79 of the IT Act, that is, the safe harbor provision, shall not be applicable, and the intermediary shall be liable for punishment under any law, including the provisions of the IT Act and the Indian Penal Code. Twitter may be in further trouble because the company has admitted to not acting on law enforcement requests, which Dr. Duggal says is prima facie grounds for losing the safe harbor provisions. For example, in the case of cartoonist Manju, Twitter had emailed Manju to say that Twitter will not be taking any action on Manju's content as requested by law enforcement. However, Kumar from Vidhi Legal has a slightly different view on this. He says, "It is not a reason to lose the safe harbor provision. However, there is a lack of clarity here since we do not know what law was cited by law enforcement while making the request. Police has in the past cited colonial era laws like Section 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code to order internet shutdowns, which should not ideally be the case, but it still holds valid. And finally, can Twitter challenge this FIR? What are Twitter's options? Kumar from Vidhi Legal says yes, Twitter can challenge this FIR and also say that there is no clear offense made out against it by the police. Twitter may also contest that there was no intention to cause harm. Kumar adds that Twitter can also contest the constitutional and legal validity of these 2021 intermediary guidelines. And that would be similar to how RT's T.M. Krishna challenged the new IT rules in Madras High Court, and also would be similar to how WhatsApp is challenging these new IT rules in Delhi High Court. For The Print, this is Regina Mindukulusurya. Do not forget to subscribe to The Print's YouTube channel, and as always, keep tabs on us across all forms of social media.